My boyfriend cheated on me with his terminally ill friend. I can't look at him the same even though she died. I wouldn't have found out if one of our mutual friends didn't slip. My boyfriend and the girl did it when they were on vacation with other friends. She had a terminal illness and is dead now. I'm confident that he was never attracted to her. They never had a relationship beyond that. She did have a secret crush on him though. She was the little sister of their friend group. This incident happened late December 2021. She died in March 2022. He was visiting the hospital when she died. He's never had a death in his life before, so it really shook him. For the past year, his mental health has been very unwell. It's not solely because of her death, but it was the catalyst. He rarely, if ever, talks about his feelings except with me. I hate myself because I get angry inside whenever he mentions her. I can't express my jealousy because she's dead anyway. This jealousy is eating me up. I just know that it wasn't just intimacy. They totally had emotional pounding because of her condition. I don't even know who initiated it. It was probably something like how she didn't want to die a virgin. My boyfriend and I had never even been intimate all the way when he smashed her. To clarify, he didn't lose his virginity to her, but she did lose her virginity to him. We have an otherwise perfect relationship. He's always been a good boyfriend even when he's at his lowest now. I had bad episodes before and the lowest of low points. He was the first who stood by me. My family is strict and didn't approve of us, but he tried hard to win even my extended family over. We've been together for more than 3 years and have known each other since high school. I don't want to push him to the brink. But I'm also afraid that he might be dismissive of my feelings. Fast forward, I couldn't take it anymore, so I talked to him immediately. It was not an angry or accusatory conversation, just very emotionally draining for both parties. I asked him as many questions as I could. He said that he regretted it immediately, but he can't fault his friend much out of compassion for her illness. He didn't tell me because he didn't know how I'd react and was afraid that I'd dump him. He didn't want to hurt me, but he did anyway because he didn't talk about it until now. The guilt is part of why his mental health is awful. He said he keeps feeling more guilty, especially every time we're together, when he talks about his mental health and I support him, and so on. It is true that he is mourning her, but it's more that he is distraught over betraying the one he wants to spend his life with. He didn't know how to talk about the latter, so he covered it up with mourning her when we talked back then. My boyfriend said that if he could, he would have asked me for permission. He would have respected my decision and wouldn't have done it. Though a part of him would also feel guilty about not fulfilling his friend's wish when she died. When I asked him if the intimacy was emotional for him, he admitted that it was because they were close friends and she was dying. He only did it because of their platonic relationship and her impending death. He wouldn't have done it in other circumstances. It wasn't romantic for him. As for who initiated, it was the girl. He was tipsy but not drunk. She kissed him and made the first move. He knew that she had a crush on him. He was never in love with her, never attracted, never saw her as a partner even after what happened. It was spur of the moment because of strong emotions. He didn't get to ask me for permission because it happened exactly at that moment. She didn't directly tell him to screw her, but she confessed her feelings for him after kissing him and touching him. He confessed to me that he felt awkward around her afterwards, but he tried to move past that because they were friends. I think it's so messed up that sleeping with him specifically was one of the dying girl's dreams. Maybe she just didn't care anymore because she was going to leave us anyway. I'm still conflicted. She wasn't even a jerk when she was alive. The girl is dead. I'm alive and with my boyfriend. What more can I do to her? Honestly, I feel like I tainted his memories of her too. They were good friends then, and now she would be remembered as that girl who ruined our relationship. I feel bad about that too. I asked him if he would have told me what happened and he said he didn't know. He might take it to the grave because he wants to forget it even happened. But he also said that he might have told me when he felt confident enough to do so. Either way, he regrets not telling me immediately what happened. I tried to ask him if he thinks she planned the trip or planned to be alone with him to get him to sleep with her, but he didn't let me finish. Unlike with other questions, he got angry. I think he doesn't want to face the fact that he might have been assaulted, especially by a friend who died. His mental health is awful already, and this is a heavy subject, so I didn't ask more about that angle yet. I asked him if he slept with her again after that or with other people. He said no. I asked what if he had another dying friend after this. He said he won't do it again given how much it affected us and our relationship. Especially because he didn't want me to be this hurt again. In our talk, my boyfriend said he'd do anything to gain my trust back again. He kept apologizing and asked me to stay with him. At the same time, he said that he understands my point of view. He wouldn't blame me if I left him and never forgave him because he's aware of his betrayal. He said that it still counted as cheating and it was wrong. When I say in this post that I feel bad about feeling certain things, he didn't gaslight or manipulate me into it. He was reassuring me that what I feel is valid. At least I know my boyfriend's side now. I think that I can move forward with him through this because I understand why it was such a difficult situation for him.
Hot girls, what is your craziest stalker story? I wouldn't class this situation as crazy. I'd class it as terrifying. I used to hate boring night shifts. I didn't know how lucky I was. At the time I was a 20-year-old single female, I worked the cash register in a convenience store while my coworker, also female, worked in the food service area. One night this gentleman came in and made multiple comments to me about how beautiful I looked, how he would love to have a young woman like me, how I would make a perfect wife for someone. Overall creepy comments that shouldn't be made to someone you just met who was trying to do their job and make a living. I tried to play nice with the guy and he finally left, disappointed that I hadn't returned his advances. I mentioned it to the other girl I was working with after he left and she rolled her eyes and told me that I needed to get over it. He began to come in every night after that. If I was working, he would follow me around the store, asking me very personal and inappropriate questions. If I wasn't working, he would ask my coworker about me, and she would readily give answers. She went so far as to tell him I was interested in him, and just playing hard to get. I finally told my assistant store manager about it, requesting a transfer off of night shift because this guy was making me uncomfortable. He told me that he would see what he could do. The next schedule that came out, I was scheduled for 5 nights. I confronted him about it, and he told me that I was the best night shift worker that he had, and that he would have the gentleman banned from the store. Well, that never happened. Things began to escalate. The guy would come in and beg for my number. He would try to give me money to go out on a date with him. He would sit outside in front of the store for hours and hours. He even stayed all the way through shift and tried to follow me to my car. Finally, I got sick of the man. I told him I wasn't interested in him. He needed to stop trying, and it was disgusting because he was old enough to be my father. I felt bad afterwards because I don't like to be a rude person, and I thought I was going to get fired for speaking to a customer that way. Hot girls, what is your craziest stalker story? The gentleman stopped coming in for about a week and I thought I was in the clear, but I wasn't. One night, about a week and a half since the last time I had seen my stalker, a bunch of the police officers, several of whom I was friends with outside of work, came in. I spent a while chatting with them as they drank their coffee, and then I went to perform my nightly cleaning duties. We had a mop closet that we kept all of our cleaning supplies in. It was in a back corner of the store by the restrooms and there were no cameras right there, so it was a blind spot in the store. I went into the mop closet to get the mop bucket and a mop when I heard someone behind me. I thought it was one of my police friends and I turned to talk to them to find my stalker standing behind me, blocking the doorway. My heart began to race in my chest. "Hey, how's it going?" I asked him, going to prep the supplies I needed to mop the store. "It's going good," he replied. And at that moment, I didn't think anything was wrong. "Have you thought about my offer?" I sighed, crossing my arms. "I told you, I'm not interested." Before I could say any more, he shoved me full strength into the wall behind me. There was a bunch of brooms and other hard objects behind me that I crashed into. I don't remember much of what happened after that, but from what my police friends told me, I began to scream at the top of my lungs, and that's what sent them running in my direction. One of my friends said that as they rounded the corner, I was slamming the palm of my hand into the guy's nose and attacking him. They tackled him, knocked him through the door we used for deliveries, and 2 of my police friends had to hold me back because I was trying to attack this guy, screaming that I was going to unalive him. They pulled me back into the break room. My managers were all called to the store at 3 in the morning, and I had to fill out a police report. My friends told me that when they took the guy to the hospital, he had a broken nose because of me fighting back, and they had accidentally dislocated his kneecap when they tackled him. Oh, and he also got a 6-month prison sentence, but he better hope he never comes near me when he gets out. My boss punished me for hurting myself at work, so I destroyed his life. I've been working at my job for a little over 1.5 years now. I was hired by the old owner of the company, who was an absolute sweetheart. Unfortunately, a couple months after I started, she was forced out of her company by her own son. I'll call him Dave. He was your typical hypocritical a-hole with a huge power complex. If you didn't agree with him on something, you would either be ignored, punished, or fired. He literally forced his mom into retirement by threatening to unalive himself and continues to use that card every time she says she wants to visit the company. Last winter, we had a massive snowstorm. Getting to work was rough, but we were told that we had to come anyway. We got there and the snow wasn't plowed from the parking lot because Dave didn't want to pay someone to come do it. Due to the lot being absolutely massive, we couldn't get it all done in time for us to help customers. As they came and went, we noticed the snow being patted down into the ground and essentially turning into a slip and slide. Well, when I came in that day, I fell while walking across the parking lot and really screwed up my back. I didn't file for workers' compensation, but instead just told the management that I needed to rest for the next few days. The next shift, I sat down for nearly the entire day, as I couldn't do much else. I did get up on occasion to help customers, but for the most part, I was forced to stay seated. The following day, my manager called me into his office to tell me I was suspended for a week. When I asked him why, I was told that Dave had heard about my back, but rather than find a solution, decided to send me on a 5-day unpaid suspension. I was a college student at the time with rent and car payments to make. I couldn't afford to lose 5 days of pay. I marched into his office and told him he had 2 options. Either he fired me so I could collect unemployment, or he unsuspends me. He told me neither was going to happen, but rather I would be used as an example for the other employees. I was livid and cursed him out. He didn't like confrontation, so he shortened my suspension just to get me out of his office. Later that day, he then singled me out in front of the other staff members for issues I have no control over. My boss punished me for hurting myself at work, so I destroyed his life. This was the tipping point for me. Due to being constantly singled out, I came to learn that everyone else was unhappy with this fact. I learned all the dirty little secrets about the company, including illegal products, labor violations, tax violations, and so on. I used the secrets I had learned to call multiple government agencies and report him by name. First, OSHA came and did an inspection on my day off. He told everyone they only cited him for a small violation and he was good other than that. I was obviously angry at that, but a few weeks later I got a packet in the mail telling me he got cited for everything and he was getting massive fines. I then got called into the office again with the manager who told me I was suspended. He proceeded to tell my manager that he was getting demoted for not writing me up more, and that I was no longer getting my raise until I fixed my attitude. This, of course, was right after he said, "I don't care that you called OSHA. This little act is known as retaliation, which is illegal to do to people who called a protected agency like OSHA." He refused to even look at me at this point because if he did anything that would imply he was punishing me for calling OSHA, I would have a lawsuit to destroy him. Well, I ended up still getting suspended, but on one of the days I was off, I got a text from a coworker. The message said, "FDA is here. The manager just quit, and Dave is being arrested. Everyone is going crazy." Turns out, my report had gone through. The FDA and IRS came rolling in full force in black trucks, SUVs. They came in and raided the place, seizing all illegal products and all the paperwork pertaining to the business. Dave was arrested for embezzlement and fraud on multiple counts. After my suspension was over, I came back into the workplace to see the old owner. Dave's mother was back. Dave ended up being charged $500,000 in fines and spent a couple months in prison. His wife left him and took his children. I couldn't be happier to see a man like him crumble.
My brother showed up intoxicated to my mother's funeral and vomited into the casket. I have always been forgiving to my siblings, but I never thought that my own brother would be capable of doing something that has literally traumatized our entire family and anyone else who happened to be at our mom's funeral. I am the oldest of 5 kids. We had a hectic household growing up, but our mom was an amazing, strong woman who did everything she could to give us all a good childhood and to raise us into respectable adults. We're all grown up now. My youngest sibling's name is Mark. He's 21 years old. Out of all of us, he is the biggest mess and honestly such a disappointment to our family. None of us are perfect, but we all care for each other and would never hurt each other. So I never thought my little brother could cause us pain like this, and I don't know how we could ever forgive him after yesterday. Even before he turned 21, my brother struggled with substance abuse, some drugs but mostly alcohol. He slowly started turning up to family functions more and more messed up, and would totally ruin a happy atmosphere by being incredibly intoxicated to the point of falling over and being unable to speak. At one family party, he fell face first onto the dining room table and cracked his head open. We had to call an ambulance for him and it really ruined the entire night. My mom had been getting older and I could tell it was hard for her to know that she was at the end of her life, and her youngest still hadn't gotten his poop together. She passed away from multiple medical issues last week, and we held her funeral yesterday. It was a total disaster and I can't stop crying when I think about what happened. My siblings and I were up at the front of the funeral home, speaking with all the guests as they came up to view her casket. It was so sad and depressing. We were all grieving and my youngest brother was nowhere to be found. To our surprise, he ended up appearing as one of the last people in line to come up and greet us. I went in to give him a hug, and immediately smelt the alcohol on him. He stumbled into my arms and began crying heavily. My heart ached for my brother, but of course, me and my siblings were pissed that he had chosen to show up completely plastered to his own mother's funeral. I thought it couldn't get any worse, but I was so wrong. After my brother collapsed into my arms, me and my other brother tried our best to stand him up on his own 2 feet so he could greet the rest of the guests with us. As soon as we propped him up and took our arms out from under him, he fell straight forward towards our mom's coffin and held himself up directly over it, facing my mom. He let out a loud, pained wail and before any of us could stop him, He vomited all over our deceased mother's face. It was the most chaotic, unsettling scene you could ever imagine would take place at a funeral. The guests started screaming and crying. Half of my siblings started beating the poop out of my brother while the other half were trying to clean my mom off while having panic attacks. We threw him out on the sidewalk of the funeral home after that. He was just crying and trying to apologize, all while lying down on the sidewalk bleeding since he was too wasted to stand up on his own. I wish I could scrub the entire day from my mind. I'm going to reach out to my brother next week, but for now, I don't think I have the stomach to even look at him.